The built-in automated incentive system, Type A, can ensure smooth and efficient operations of the clinic by ensuring doctors and staffs get incentivized for proper work. These are the 6 incentives that are automatically calculated based on work done. Incentive 1. Incentive 2A. Incentive 2B. Incentive 3. Incentive 4. Incentive 5. This is the chart of incentives 1 to 3. To qualify for the incentives, first both the doctor's and staff's calendar must be correctly filled up. Go to the reports page. Scroll down and click Doctor's Calendar. For staffs, click Staff's Calendar. Make sure this roster is properly filled up with the correct work times. Only patients seen within these work times will be considered for the incentives. For Incentives 1, only the primary doctor and staff specified here will qualify for the incentives. Now let's see how the incentives are tabulated. Go to the Reports page. Scroll down and click Doctor's Incentives. For staffs, click Staff's Incentives. Select the year, month and click Payments Processing. Every one of this box represents your working shift according to doctor's calendar or staff's calendar. This turquoise box shows the sales thresholds to qualify for Incentive 2A, 2B and 3. The number on the left, 575, is the threshold for cash sales and the number to the right, 703, is the threshold for panel sales. The time shown in the black box is the time these thresholds will take effect. In this example it is 8 a.m. When there are more than one doctor in a shift, the thresholds are divided equally, resulting in lower thresholds. This second turquoise box indicates that from 3 p.m. onwards, the cash threshold is 82 and panel threshold is 100.5. If the number of doctors in the shift does not change, as saved in doctor's calendar, the turquoise box numbers will not change. In this example, for the entire shift from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., the thresholds are as indicated in the turquoise box. These thresholds are automatically calculated based on the clinic's expenses, so the lower the clinic's expenses are, the lower these thresholds will be. Cash count is the number of cash patients seen by this doctor in the shift. Only visits with this doctor as the primary doctor will be included here. Credit card, bank transfers and e-payments are considered as cash sales. Note that for credit card, bank transfers and e-payments, they are only considered for this incentives once the payments are received and recorded from the merchants in card/e-payments knockoff. The number in the brackets are all the cash patients seen by this doctor, while the number outside of the brackets are cash patients that qualify for Incentive 1. Only patients with charges above the minimum charges set will qualify for Incentive 1. This is the Incentive 1, cash, amount. In this example, 9 patients qualified and Incentive 1 is Rm2 per patient, so the total Incentive 1, cash, is Rm18, 9 by 2. Panel count is the number of panel patients seen by this doctor in the shift. Only visits with this doctor as the primary doctor will be included here. The number in the brackets are all the panel patients seen by this doctor, while the number outside of the brackets are panel patients that qualify for Incentive 1. Only patients with charges above the minimum charges set will qualify for Incentive 1. This is the Incentive 1, panel, amount. In this example, 15 patients qualified and Incentive 1 is Rm2 per patient, so the total Incentive 1, panel, is Rm30, 15 by 2. This is the cash sales amount for this doctor in this shift. This amount is used to calculate Incentive 2A, where certain percentage from the excess off the cash threshold is payable as Incentive 2A. This is the Incentive 2A amount qualified. To see the breakdown of this amount, you need to list the patients in this shift by clicking Show at the right. We will go through that shortly after. This is the panel sales amount for this doctor in this shift. This amount is used to calculate incentive 2B and 3, where certain percentage from the excess off the panel threshold is payable as incentive 2B and 3. This is the incentive 2B amount qualified. To see the breakdown of this amount, you need to list the patients in this shift by clicking Show at the right. We will go through that shortly after. This is the incentive 3 amount qualified. The amount in the brackets are the amount payable if all the panel's invoices have been paid. The amount outside the brackets is the amount payable based on panels that have paid to date. This is the total of all the procedures incentives for this shift. Now let's see the list and breakdown of the incentives. Click Show. Rows in gray fonts are patients seen within the shift, but the primary doctor is not this doctor, so these patients are not included in the calculation of incentive 1 for this doctor. Rows in black fonts are patients with this doctor as the primary doctor, so these patients are included in the calculation of incentive 1 for this doctor. The cash column shows the amounts paid by the patients in cash. Credit cards, bank transfers and e-payments are considered cash sales. Note that for credit card, bank transfers and e-payments, they are only considered for this incentives once the payments are received and recorded from the merchants in card/e-payments knockoff. Till then the amount will be shown in red here. The panel column shows the amounts billed under panels. The panel paid column shows the amount paid by the panel companies. Incentive 3 is based on these amounts. The INVNO column shows the panel invoices number. Absence of invoice numbers indicate absence of panel invoices. The PROC Incorporated column shows the procedures incentives accumulated for the month. In this example, RM15 shows as procedures incentives for the VN 275,918. Take note of the VN 275,918. And we will check the details of this procedure incentive. Go to the collection page. Enter the VN 275,918 under VN. And click Find. This downward icon in red indicates that there are procedure incentives for this VN. Click to see the details. Under Doc. Incorporated RM15 is payable, and to include in the incentives, EOM should be ticked. If EOM is not ticked, this procedure incentive will not be included in the incentives. Doctors count is the number of doctors in the shift. If there are more than one doctor, the thresholds for cash and panel sales will be divided accordingly, resulting in lower thresholds. Achieve shows the sales achieved at the time of the visit, divided into cash and panel sales. In this example, the threshold for cash sales is RM 575, but as of that visit, the sales achieved is 0. On the other hand, the threshold for panel sales is RM 703, and as of that visit, the sales achieved is RM 48. As the sales increase and once the sales exceed the thresholds, the achieved figures will be in green. Here the cash sales is RM 616 and the threshold for cash sales is RM 575, so incentive 2A has started. Here the panel sales is RM 736 and the threshold for panel sales is RM 703, so incentive 2B and 3 have started. The asterisk at the end indicates that this patient's charges are below the minimum charges as such does not qualify for incentive 1. If any special period has been set for this clinic, total sales in this period will be listed here. Incentives in this special period may differ, e.g. after midnight. This is the total count of cash patients for the month. The number in brackets are all cash patients, while number outside the brackets are cash patients that qualify for incentive 1, patients with charges above minimum charges. This is the total of incentive 1, cash sales, payable. This is the total count of panel patients for the month. The number in brackets are all panel patients, while number outside the brackets are panel patients that qualify for Incentive 1, patients with charges above minimum charges. This is the total of Incentive 1 payable, panel sales. This is the total cash sales for this doctor. This is the total of Incentive 2A payable. This is the total panel sales for this doctor. This is the total of Incentive 2B payable. This is the total of Incentive 3 payable. The amount in the brackets are the amount payable if all the panel's invoices have been paid. The amount outside the brackets is the amount payable based on panels that have paid to date. This is the total of Incentive 1, 2A, 2B and 3. The amount in the brackets are the amount payable if all the panel's invoices have been paid. The amount outside the brackets is the amount payable based on panels that have paid to date. If there are any penalties, the incentives will be deducted accordingly, and the total after penalty deductions will be shown under Total After Penalty. This column will list all the payments carried into salaries. One line represents 1 month. The incentives are paid over a period of 3 months, or more depending on clinic settings. Clicking the payment will show the details. The incentive payment that has been carried into salaries. In order for the incentives to be carried into salaries, the incentives amount must be acknowledged first. Click Show Amount. The incentives amount is acknowledged by clicking Accept. Make sure to acknowledge the incentives amount before the payroll processing date, otherwise this incentives amount will not be included in the salaries. As the incentives are paid over a period of 3 months, or more depending on clinic settings, incentives balances in the previous months must also be acknowledged. In this example, the current month is July. So the incentives balances for June, May and April must be acknowledged, so that those balances will be included in July's salary. So in this example, in April, May, and June, click Show Amount and acknowledge the incentives amount by clicking Accept. Note that this has to be done for every month in order to carry this incentives into the salary, in this example, April, May, June, and July. If special period is configured for this clinic, the incentives for special period will be shown here under Special Period Kernel Incorporated, e.g. midnight. The total of procedures incentives will be shown under Proc. Incorporated. Clicking this will list all the VNs with procedure incentives. These are the visits with procedures incentives and their amounts. Note that procedures incentives will only be listed here under incentives if EOM is ticked in the collection page. Now let's see how the incentive 4 and 5 for the panel and inventory staffs will look like. Go to the reports page. Scroll down and click Staff's Incentives. Select the staff, year, month and click Payments Processing. For staffs in charge of panels, the panel paybacks total for the month and the tiers will be shown here. This is Incentive 4. These are the incentive tiers. In this example, if panel paybacks are more than Rm 145,000, Rm 500 incentives will be payable. If less than Rm 145,000 but more than Rm 130,000, Rm 250 incentives will be payable. In this example, the panel payback total for the month is Rm 40. The panel paybacks will be listed in this table. Note that for clinics with bank reconciliations enabled, only payments that have been reconciled will be considered for the incentives. This is to ensure the reconciliations are carried out efficiently. Collection incentive will show the incentive 4 payable. In this example, Rm 40 panel paybacks does not qualify for any incentives. The tiers that qualify for this incentives are set via Manage Staff's Incentive Details. In this example, panel paybacks of Rm 155,983.8 qualifies for Rm 500 incentive. For staffs in charge of inventory, the clinic's sales for the month and the total of inventory purchases for the month will be shown here. This is incentive 5. Usage is the total of all inventory purchases for the month, and revenue is the clinic's sales for the month. Ratio is the percentage of inventory purchases against the clinic's sales. The inventory incentive column will show any incentive 5 qualified. The ratios that qualify for this incentives are set via managed staff's incentive details. Let's see the incentive settings under managed staff's incentive details in the reports page. Incentive settings for incentives 1, 2A, 2B and 3 are similar as of the doctor's settings. More on these under managed doctor's incentive settings. These are tiers for incentive 4, for staff in charge of panels. In this example, if panel paybacks are more than Rm 145,000, Rm 500 incentive is payable. For paybacks lesser than Rm 145,000 but more than Rm 130,000, Rm 250 incentive is payable. No incentive is payable for paybacks less than Rm 130,000. These are tiers for incentive 5, for staff in charge of inventory. In this example, if panel purchases are less than 15% of the clinic's sales, Rm 300 incentive is payable. If the purchases are higher than 15% but lower than 18%, Rm 200 incentive is payable. If the purchases are lower than 20% but higher than 18%, Rm 100 incentive is payable. If purchases are higher than 20%, no incentive is payable. The month and year this settings will take effect are specified here, and Save as click to save these settings. Let's see the settings for doctor's incentives. Click Manage Doctor's Incentive Settings. These are settings for incentives, Type A. This is for incentive 1, cash, where fixed payment per qualifying cash patient is paid. In this example, Rm2 is payable for every qualifying cash patient. This is for incentive 1, panel, where fixed payment per qualifying panel patient is paid. In this example, Rm2 is payable for every qualifying panel patient. Qualifying patients means any patients with charges above the minimum charges specified here. This is for incentive 2A, where certain percentage of the cash sales in excess of the cash threshold is payable as incentives. In this example, 10% of the excess is payable as incentives. This is for incentive 2B, where certain percentage of the panel sales in excess of the panel threshold is payable as incentives. In this example, 1% of the excess is payable as incentives. This is for incentive 3, where certain percentage of the panel sales in excess of the cash threshold is payable as incentives, only if the panels pay the clinic within 3 months. The month and year this settings will take effect are specified here, and Save as click to save these settings. This is the maximum number of months allowed for panels paybacks to qualify for incentive 3. In this example, 4 includes the current month, so once panel invoices are created on subsequent month, 3 months are allowed. The cash and panel thresholds for incentives 2A, 2B and 3 are based on clinic's operating expenses that are divided by the operating hours. In this example, the operating expenses are spread out over 16 hours. The higher the operating hours, the lower the cash and panel thresholds are. For 24H clinics, usually only the main operating hours are considered to make up for the higher operating costs overnight. As the thresholds for incentives 2A, 2B and 3 are divided into cash and panel sales, the division is made according to the cash sales percentage specified here. In this example, 45% of the sales is cash sales. Click Save to save these settings. The special period is defined here. In this example 12 midnight to 8 a.m. is the special period. The incentive 1 in this special period can be increased by the percentage specified here. In this example, 0 indicates no increment in incentive 1. If 20 is specified, incentive 1 in this period will be increased by 20%. Here additional incentives can be paid if sales in the special period exceeds the bracket specified. In this example, if sales in special period exceeds Rm 500, Rm 100 additional incentives are payable. If sales in special period exceeds Rm 50 but lower than Rm 500, Rm 50 additional incentives are payable. If sales are less than Rm 50, no additional incentives are payable. If this is ticked and if the additional incentives in the special period is payable, Incentive 1 in the special period is automatically cancelled. Note that the settings for special period only affects Incentive 1. Incentive 2A, 2B, and 3 are unaffected. The month and year these settings will take effect are specified here, and Save as click to save these settings. Now let's see how the clinic's operating expenses are set. Go to the admin page. Click Details. Scroll down and click Cost/Profit Matrix. This is the clinic's operating expenses per month. Note that this operating expense is not based on accounting principles, but a benchmark to incentivize the doctors and staffs. As such, only the relevant expenses should be included here. Locum and pharmaceuticals are considered as mandatory expenses and cannot be deleted. To change the values, change accordingly and click Edit to save. To add a new expense, specify the expense under Expenditure, the expense amount per month under Cost and click Add to save. Expenses other than locum and pharmaceuticals can be edited or deleted. To edit, change accordingly and click Edit to save. To delete, click Del. For the procedures incentives, the incentives are based on the total charges of the visits. Go to the admin page to manage settings for procedures incentives. Scroll down and click Procedures/Surgeries and Investigations Incentives. For every procedure/investigation, specify the percentage of the total charges that will be payable as procedures incentives, separated for doctor and staff. Click Save to save any changes line by line. If there are multiple procedures/investigations saved for a visit, the procedure/investigation with the highest incentive percentage will be used to calculate the incentive based on the total charges. For example, if 10% is specified for anemia studies and 5% specified for antenatal 1, if the visit's charges are Rm 100, Rm 10 will be payable as procedures incentives, 10% is the highest percentage. By default, the percentages specified here are to calculate incentives based on the total charges, not the procedures or the investigation's charges. To change this, contact your Intelsys technician. That's it. You're done.